Alright, Shalom Hebrews, Shalom Hebrews. Shalom to the Israelite community. Much love to the Israelite Brotherhood family and those who watch the Israelite Brotherhood channel. I know it's been a long time coming. Alright, check this out. I was discussing some Israelite heritage with some Israelites. You know, a couple of brothers the other day. And we got to talking. And I was listening to them. And man, they mostly was quoting myths and history from books that they done read that was wrote by others that didn't, just actually know the history, especially dates and timeline, and they was just mixing the history up. And then, when I got to explaining the history to them, they kind of like start to understand a little bit. And then, one of the brothers said, well, what's the history we shouldn't believe in? And alright, I told him I got a lot of videos, explaining, the Israelite heritage, and a lot of the videos explain, what went down. And then, what I really want to try to explain the dangers, the history Israelites shouldn't believe in. That's a danger, because it's myths, and you can look into Tanakh history and see that they are myths and that they are not true based upon Tanakh history. Now, what Israelites don't know is that we abandoned our heritage to some Babylonian scribes. Man, some Babylonian scribes that's responsible for Babylon's history, Babylon's God's history. Matter of fact, the Babylonian God's history couldn't exist today if it wasn't for these individuals keeping it intact and keeping it going, because those are their forefathers' history. And what happened is that those people from Babylon, from Sippar, from Sepharvaim, who are the Sephardists, they got placed in our heritage. Basically, they was in our heritage already, but the most important scribes came. And then when they got a hold to our heritage, they start writing, a whole lot of false history, and false history is created to keep the Israelites from one day coming into correct history. It's important for the people who got control of the Israelite history to keep false history going, because they know Israelites got a time to wake up, and that Almighty Yah was gonna wake us up. But the Babylonian scribes know that if they keep the false history going and keep it turning, that it's gonna ensnare a lot of Israelites. And that'll be these people right here, man. They was Amorites, and they're from Sepharvaim, this place right here called Sippar. Did you see Sippar right there? Sippar. That's where they from, Sippar and Nippur. But they are control of they had control of the whole Babylonian, Mesopotamian area at one time, where they're actually from. And man, they are book writers, scribes, and they've been keeping a lot of history. Matter of fact, if you look at the world history today, I don't care where it's at, and you study its roots and its foundation, you're gonna see that, them Amorites been there, from the east to the west, and that they are like the founders of false religion and false history. I got some videos explaining their essence and where they come from and what they, basically about. And then I show you their heritage in the Tanakh. But, Israelites done read a lot of books that these folks done turned out. And they done turned out millions of books probably over the time that we Israelites been out of heritage. So if you pick up them books and you start reading it and you done accepted it as truth without searching Tanakh history to verify it, then you're going to be kind of like lost, and you're going to be believing in myths, and then you cannot come into your heritage correctly believing in false history. That's why there's a lot of Israelite organizations and ain't none of us on the same page, is because the vast majority, if not all, them picked up them books that them Babylonian scribes done wrote and then accepted it as truth instead of doing their own research. But you see Amorite, Sepharvaim, and then this is where they from, Sippar. They was placed they was placed in our land in 722 BC when the northern kingdom was on Egyptian religion, and then how that they got infused in the Israelite heritage. And man, I got videos explaining how the Sephardi's don't want us to come into our heritage as Israelites, and that's why they done spread our heritage to all kind of folks all over the earth. And then, I was explaining to the brothers that that after we broke the covenant, that it was impossible to hang on to an Israelite heritage when our heritage had to be blotted out. And then that's why come those other peoples around the world is claiming the Israelite heritage, not under the curses. Not under the curses. Man, there's a lot going on in this Israelite world trying to get it together and have solid history that you can, know is truth, because only the truth, man, gonna, bring us closer to our freedom, and that how we can go back to the promised land with false doctrines. All right. This video, man, is about history Israelites shouldn't believe in. And man, one of the main ones, man, that I think is that 10 Lost Tribe. Man, that 10 Lost Tribe lie or that 10 Lost Tribe doctrine. I got videos explaining it, but I'm making this all together, all one, so Israelites don't have to go look through a lot of videos to try to get the understanding. But that 10 Lost Tribes doctrine, man, it is horrible, and it's keeping us separated, because you got the vast majority of the Israelite community believing in this lie, believing that 10 tribes was taken off during our Assyrian troubles, and that they got spread all around the world, and that they was able to retain their heritage in those lands. And then I can show that that's false. And believing in the 10 Lost Tribe, mean it is a danger, because it spreads our heritage to others. It's Israelites looking at peoples all around the world claiming our heritage, and that's our brother and sister, and not knowing how those folks got the Israelite heritage and title. They gonna be guided from these folks right here. Man, the Sephardi's, man, the Sephardims who had control of the earth. Man, at one time after we broke the covenant, to Ashkenazi kind of like come in the picture and start, putting their foot down. But these Amorites, man, they been keeping false history about the Israelites turning for a long time, and they done wrote a lot of books now. And I got history explaining them in detail. But that 10 Lost Tribe doctrine, man, is terrible, and it's keeping us from uniting, because you got Israelites that embrace others that are not Israelites, that us that know the truth are not gonna accept as Israelites, because we can show in the Tanakh, man, that 10 Lost Tribes is false, and nobody escaped the Creator's wrath, especially not the Israelites. All right, man, the next danger is the Israelites escaped curses. Man, that's awful thinking that some of us escaped the curses and that we are able to live in the other lands since biblical times, allegedly, and keep Israelite title. Man, that it didn't go down like that, and I'm gonna show you that that's false, and that we Israelites did not escape the curses, none of us, and how did we went into a certain area in Africa, and how that we was enslaved from Africa, and how it took 275 years to remove us from Africa, and that how all the Israelites ran into Africa, and that how, like I say, it never was any 10 Lost Tribes. All right, number 3, man, it's gonna be demigod worshiping. Now, this is kind of like the hardest one, because Israelites want to think that they ain't got to do nothing, and that a demigod, God's son, is gonna come save us and change our destiny and resurrect us. And I can show that our ancestors in the Tanakh didn't believe in demigods, or that tradition wasn't passed down to us, and that we only got that under being enslaved on a plantation, and that, some of us say because our mama taught it to us, our mama taught it to us, and our grandmama taught it to us, that they right, not knowing that they didn't study, and they didn't know none of the history. They didn't have none of the archives available on the computer in this world. They got every document in the world, on it and so forth, and that you could do some research and you could see the truth if you trust in Almighty Yah. But the majority of us believe in what our parents said, not knowing that they didn't intentionally mislead us. They just was teaching us what they parents taught them. And then they was teaching what their parents taught them, that go all the way back to the slavery days. We not a whole lot of generations removed from slavery, and then how the slavery doctrine still, persist in our community. But I can show that the people who they would think, like the demigod worship, gonna basically come after the Tanakh was closed, and then the people who we abandoned our heritage to created a history for themselves, and then how did they believe in God's sons and demigods and so forth coming to save them, and then how did they, was recognized as the Israelites, because, we broke covenant and abandoned the whole Israelite title and left it to the people that was in the land. It was people still in the land when we got chased out. Them Amorite tribes. And then I show who actually chased us out. The people who chased us out got our heritage today. And the people who we abandoned our heritage to got our heritage men today. And that's like, it's two groups got the Israelite heritage and title, and that's gonna be Ashkenazi, who in history is called Scythians, and then the Sephardims, who are called Sephardi, Sephardic, and Sephardim, or Haredim. I was in the Promised Land not too long ago, and I'm thankful for that journey. That man, I was able to see them up close and understand them up close. I've been studying them from afar, but I was able to see them up close. And I basically lived it with Ashkenazi while I was there, but I was able to see the Sephardi's, and those are the peoples, the two groups that we abandoned our heritage to during the Babylonian Wars. And now this group, these are the scribes, and they wrote a lot of false history. Ashkenazi just been benefiting off of it, but they wrote a lot of false history, and that 10 lost tribes is going to be their main false history that they put down, because that's what, keep Israelites separated and confused, why it unite the converts that the Sephardists created back in the days. Man, they created a lot of converts, a lot of people converted to the Israelite heritage under what they call Judaism, which is a religion that they created. And we know in the Tanakh that the Creator ain't, in the 5 books in the Torah, that the Creator ain't call none of his laws Judaism, or none of that. All right. The next thing, man, the next danger, is believing that we went into Africa in 70 A.D. Because Herd Edomite temple was destroyed, or that the Israelites fled into Africa in 70 A.D. trying to get away from the Romans. Well, what about the Greeks? Why we didn't run and try to get away from the Greeks? They was more vicious than the Romans, and I could show that the Greeks are the ones that destroyed the exiles, and that how we wasn't exposed to Greek and Roman culture, because when we went into Africa during the Babylonian Wars, man, we ain't know nothing about the Greeks or the Romans. So we didn't have that culture on us. But to say that we went into Africa in 70 AD is saying that you was exposed to almost 400 years of Greek culture and some of the Roman culture, and then how that you can't abandon that. We've been in America 400 years, and it's impossible for us to just get this American culture up off us that we've been enslaved with. Well, it would have been the same for the Israelites that had been so-called exposed to Greek and Roman culture, and how that they wouldn't have been able to get that up off them, and that how that wasn't found on none of the captured people taken from Africa, the 275 years that it took to remove all the Israelites, that no Greek and Roman culture was found on us. And I showed that that's false, that we never ran into Africa in 70 AD, and that was the hardest being chased, to North Africa, going to North Africa and Libya and all them other spots, Libya and Spain, and going into, the Iberian Peninsula, men in Europe and so forth, and that how that we Israelites never had a chance to be exposed to Greek and Roman culture. So we didn't go into Africa in 70 AD. You got Israelites in the promised land now believing in believing that we went into Africa in 70 AD. Now the people that got our heritage will help you a little bit if you promoting false history that would not lead the majority of us back to our heritage. That's why I say the Israelites have to read the Tanakh, and then not only that, understand timelines. And so forth. That's like this. Man, I got to have a timeline. You know what I'm saying, and understand dates and so forth. And then when you understand dates when these individuals come about that ruled, then you can search history, man, within that time frame, and that how a lot of Israelites won't do it. But I got a videos called Hebrew Israelite Timeline, and that's like with that 10 lost tribe lie. Israelites need to know that we never went into Africa in 70 AD, or that we went into Africa to to do demigod worship, and that how that is false. But if an Israelite look at King Hezekiah's history, man, he kind of, he come on 716 BCE, and you would see that, the so-called 10 lost tribe myth is supposed to come off Israelites being chased into the different parts of the world in not 70 AD, but in 722 BCE. So, that's false. That's false. And then if you read the Tanakh, if you read the book of Ezekiel, and it's kind of important to read the book of Ezekiel first, because the book of Ezekiel, you can see these prophecies coming to pass in the book of Jeremiah, how the prophet Ezekiel was still dealing with the Israelites. He was still dealing with the tribes of Israel, even though we wasn't being called by names individually no more, because we was all one sin. We was all grouped together as one sin, and Almighty only seen Israel because he seen Israel sinning. He didn't see the individual tribes sinning and so forth, and how we was all sinning together. That's why it was a difference between Israel and Judah, because Judah descendants mostly tried to do the covenant, and hold on to it as best they can, and that how it was lost. So he made the difference between Judah and Israel, because the tribes of Judah tried to hold on, but then that they was corrupted by the rest of the Israelites. Us Israelites been on Egyptian religion for a long time. We was on Egyptian religion for a long time, and that's what destroyed us. That's what got us, knocked out our heritage, trying to follow up behind the Egyptians and then do their religion and so forth. And it's like this individual right here, you know, here's an object, some things that they have, monuments that they done brung from Egypt that was around during our enslavement. That old Cleopatra needle. But this guy here Necho gonna be responsible for killing King Josiah. And then, the Egyptians put us on Egyptian religion after King Josiah cleaned it up in the northern kingdom, which showed that the Israelites were still there, and that how he killed King Josiah, had him killed and put us on the Egyptian religion, and then how we was, doomed, chased out. And in the book of Ezekiel, it's the first wave of troubles of the invasion after King Josiah was killed, and then how the after King Josiah was killed, then that's the book of Ezekiel when we get invaded, and then how you can see those prophecies that was prophesied in the book of Ezekiel about us getting off the land was in the book of Jeremiah. That he came, man, a little time later, but how that the book of Jeremiah is gonna be our last act on the promised land, man, before we was, driven into the curses. But I want to show how it wasn't no 10 lost tribes. You know what I'm saying? It's very important to get that understanding, because then if you got that understanding, then you ain't gonna be believing in the myths. If you understand this history, the 1, 2, 3, 4, that you basically can, make it in the Israelite, history world, and can kind of like, make it through. But how if you believe in myths like the 10 lost tribes or Israelites escape curses, demigods, and going into Africa in 70 AD, then you're gonna be messed up. You're gonna be messed up, and you ain't gonna never be able to come into your truth right, to get a solid foundation. And that's what it's about. Man, it's about having a solid foundation. But this is what I want to read right here to get rid of that 10 lost tribe myth, man, is that we know that King Hezekiah come on in 716 BC. Well, in 715 BC is when he, this history was wrote, what I'm saying, about him. And it showed that us Israelites was still at home, and we was at home till the Babylonian wars come about. And then we was all driven into Africa, and how it never was any 10 lost tribes. Look, Hezekiah sent word to all Israel. Look, and Hezekiah sent word to all Israel and Judah. Now, it would have been impossible for King Hezekiah to send all words to Israel if we what I'm saying, man, if we was gone into captivity, the northern tribe, and that's false. Look, Hezekiah sent word to all Israel and Judah, and he also wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh to come to the house of the Elohim in Jerusalem to keep the Passover for the Elohim Yah of Israel. The king and his officers and the congregation in Jerusalem had agreed to keep the Passover in the second month, for at the time they were unable to keep it, for not enough priests had sanctified themselves, nor had the people assembled in Jerusalem. The king and the whole congregation thought it was proper to issue a decree and proclaim throughout all Israel from Beersheba to Dan that they come and keep the Passover. And then let me show Beersheba to Dan. Man, and then it's common knowledge, man, from Beersheba to Dan, that how we'd have had to been home. Look, you see Beersheba there, all the way to Dan. And this is in 715 BC when King Hezekiah did this. So he wrote a letter that circulated throughout our whole heritage. Now, it wouldn't have made no sense to send letters to the northern kingdom if they was gone in 722 BC. See, that's why it's important not to believe in the myths. Because if you believe in the myths, then you can't come into your Israelite heritage right. Not with no lies. Alright? The king and the whole congregation thought it was proper to issue a decree and proclaim throughout all Israel, from Beersheba to Dan, that they come and keep the Passover for the Elohim of Israel in Jerusalem. For not often did they act in accord with what was written. The carriers went went out with the letters from the king and his officers throughout all Israel and Judah. Look, throughout all Israel and Judah, by order of the king, proclaiming, O ye Israelites, return to the Elohim Yah of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, and he will return to the remain of you who escaped from the hand of the kings of Assyria. See, why would he say that Israelites escaped the hands of the kings of Assyria if they didn't? So, that 10 lost tribe lie is destroyed right there. Look, do not be like your fathers and brothers who trespassed against the Elohim of their father, and he turned them into a horror, as you see. All right, that's going to be the northern kingdom fighters. Man, I got videos going into this in detail, but the northern kingdom fighters, Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, are the ones that the Babylonians, not the Babylonians, but the Assyrians kidnapped to help them fight against the Babylonians. You know how history is not being told correctly. That's why I come in the book of Jeremiah. I mean, this was said in the Elohim. This is Jeremiah 3. 3:11. And the Elohim said unto me, the backsliding Israel had justified herself more than treacherous Judah. Go and proclaim these words toward the north, and say, return, thou backsliding Israel, saith the Elohim, and I will not cause my anger to fall upon you, for I am merciful, said the Elohim, and I will not keep my anger forever. So it wouldn't make no sense for Almighty Yah to be talking to some people that wasn't there. It don't make no sense. It don't make no sense for him to be talking to some Israelites that wasn't there. But if you go to, man, I think it's First Chronicles. Man, it'll be First Chronicles 5. First Chronicles 5. Let me see. I'm gonna find it. All right, here it is. This will show that who the kings of Assyria needed. Look, First Chronicles 5, and then when you get down, man, to 18, look, the sons of Reuben, the Gadites, the half tribe of Manasseh, of valiant men able to bear buckler and sword, and to shoot with bow, and skillful in war, were 40,703 score that went out to war. All right, and then when you get over here to 26, and the Elohim of Israel, the Yah of Israel stirred up the spirit of Paul, king of Assyria, in the spirit of Talicanazar, king of Assyria, and he carried them away, even the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half tribe of Manasseh, and brought them to Hala and Harbor and Har and to the river Gazan, man, unto this day. Now those are the Israelites that was taken to that the Assyrians needed to fight, men, against the Babylonians. I got videos going into this, how they only took 3 tribes. And then I showed it how those 3 tribes or people taken from the Mesopotamia area had a chance to come back home. Had a chance to come back home, and I could show this real easy. Man, that'd be, man, let me see what scripture. That'd be in Isaiah, how it was a prophecy for those Israelites to come back home that was taken to Assyria. And it come to pass. You are not a prophet, man, unless the history come to pass. And that'd be Isaiah 19, I think. Let's see, I'm gonna find it. All right, here it is. All right. In that day shall there be, this is Isaiah 19:23. In that day shall there be a highway out of Egypt to Assyria, and the Assyrians shall come into Egypt, and the Egyptians into Assyria, and the Egyptians shall serve with the Assyrians. In that day shall Israel be the third with Egypt and with Assyria, even a blessing in the midst of the land, whom the Elohim of hosts shall bless, saying, blessed be Egypt, my people, in Assyria, the work of my hands, in Israel, mine inheritance. I showed that those Israelites come back home, and you even see the mention of Israel during Ezra time. And how did we come home way before then, but we come home doing what's called the satire history of Egypt. But you see Israelites still around. You know, they ain't mentioned by name or tribes no more in the book of Nehemiah and in the book of Ezra. You know, so that kind of like got rid of the 10 lost tribes myth, and then especially if we escaped and King Hezekiah sent a letter to the different, parts of our land in 716 or 715 BCE, and how did that 7 years after the so-called 722 so-called taking the 10 lost tribes. Now, this is what it means when you read and say, oh, they took all Israel, meaning that if they took one Israelite off the land, that it shouldn't have been done, and that was a tragedy. And they speaking more on terms like that. Israel was taken away, and he talking about the fruit that was taken away, and how that wasn't supposed to happen. But all of us didn't go into the Assyrian captivity as shown. King Hezekiah saying that we escaped the Assyrians, and here it is right here again. All right. O Israel, return. O Israel, O you Israelites, return to the Elohim of your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, and he will return to the remain of you who escaped from the hands of the kings of Assyria. So if we escape from the hands of the king of Assyria, then it couldn't be no 10 lost tribes because we escaped. And this is in 716 BCE. All right, now the next thing is, number 2 is the Israelites escape the curses. Ain't no Israelites escape no curses. Impossible for us to escape the curses. After Almighty Yah said, that we were being cursed and then outline the curses. The curses is identical to what they call black history here in America or in the Western Hemisphere. All the troubles we have been through and all the catastrophe and hardships that we have endured, man, it's the same as in the book of Deuteronomy. Chapter 28 of Deuteronomy, as well as Leviticus 26, and how that we ain't escaped no curses, but it's a justification why people are around the earth claiming the Israelite heritage, that we can kind of like pinpoint, how that they got the Israelite heritage, and they got it from the Sephardi groups that converted a lot of peoples in different lands, and that how did those peoples in the different lands that was converted and then having the Israelite title for hundreds of years thought that they was the real Israelites. And then that's why come you don't see biblical curses on them. You're not going to see biblical curses on them. These two groups, man, converted a lot of groups. They converted Africans, Indians, Chinese. I got videos going on all this. They converted Indians, Chinese, Europeans, everybody except us got converted to Israelite heritage. And those are the people with the Israelite heritage in all these different lands that some of you Israelites say, these are our brothers and sisters, and not knowing that the peoples are really not Israelites and that they are only got the Israelite title because of conversions and so forth. And that how that no Israelites men escape the Creator, especially after this. After us saying that we was going into Africa to do the Egyptian religion. And that's what us Israelites did. We went into Africa to do the Egyptian religion. And that destroyed us. We abandoned covenant. Well, it was already said that we would abandon covenant. And then we did. We chose Egyptian religion over Israelite. Over the laws that Almighty Yah gave us, we chose the Egyptian culture. And then that's what destroyed us. That's what got our heritage blotted out, because Almighty Yah is a jealous Yah, and you can't worship no other gods, and I've proven that the Egyptian gods are the fallen angelic beings, or whatever you want to call them, but that they are the ones, the God's sons and so forth, and how that they are not to be worshipped and honored in no kind of way. But this is what we Israelites did. We did this. Then all this during the book of Jeremiah, during the Babylonian wars. That's like I said, man, if you ever want to see some prophecies come to pass, read the book of Ezekiel. Read the book of Ezekiel, and then read the book of Jeremiah. You're going to see that the book of Ezekiel was the first captivity when the Babylonians came and got us, when they was destroying Assyria. And then it came and got us. And because we was in the Assyrian army helping them and fighting against the Babylonians. Well, they come and got us. And man, they took some of us to Babylon, but the vast majority ran off into Africa, and this is what we said. And we abandoned the whole covenant. Then this is Jeremiah 44:15. Then all the men which knew that their wives had burned incense unto other gods, and all the women that stood by a great multitude, even all the people that dwelled in the land of Egypt and Pathros, answered Jeremiah, saying, As for the word that thou hast spoken unto us in the name of the Elohim, we will not hearken unto thee, but we will certainly do whatsoever thing go forth out of our own mouth, to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven. That's that Is and Horus stuff. Burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done, we and our fathers, our kings, our princes, in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. For then had we plenty of victuals as food, and we were well and saw no evil. But since we left off to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, we have wanted all things, and have been consumed by the sword and by famine. All right, that got us tore up. That got us beat down. When we said that we was going into Africa to worship the Egyptian religion, see, we didn't go into Africa pre-exposed to Greek, Roman culture, or the Babylonian culture. None of that. We were strictly on Egyptian religion. And we went into Africa to do it. So, that's what happened to us. All right. No Israelites escaped the curses for doing that. We all went into the northern kingdom. If you read the book of Jeremiah, you're going to see the Israel is mentioned. And Almighty Yah made the distinction between Israel and Judah. Israel been on Egyptian religion since Jeroboam, 931 BCE. But we was on Egyptian religion after the death of King David and Solomon. Come on, and then Jeroboam come out of Egypt with the Egyptian religion. We've been messed up ever since. And that how Almighty Yah wasn't calling on them tribes individually no more. He seen us all as one. We had one punishment coming. All right, number 3, man, gonna be demigod worship. Man, if you read, man, the Tanakh, man, you gonna find out that can't nobody come die for our sins. Nobody can come die for our sins. Impossible for somebody to come die for our sins, knowing that we broke covenant. And if you look at Ezekiel 14:14, look, though these 3 men, Noah, Daniel, and Job, were in it, they should deliver but their own souls by their righteousness, said the Elohim. So can't nobody come die for your sins. Nobody can't die for your sins. And how did it didn't make no sense to create or have a God's son coming to save us when we couldn't be saved from the curses that Almighty Yah put on us. So after we then broke the covenant and then got cursed, then it wouldn't be no need for a God's son coming to save us when Almighty Yah say he gonna resurrect us himself. That he gonna bring us into the land, and that we gonna follow him and honor him. That's all Almighty Yah wanted, for us to worship him. He don't want us believing in no other gods, godsons, cousins, or none of that stuff. Look, though Noah, Daniel, and Job were in it, as I live, said to Elohim, they shall deliver neither son nor daughter. They shall but deliver their own souls by their righteousness. See, we Israelites seeing it as a whole going into Africa, and that's why come we got punished as a whole, but nobody can come save us. And it's like the Israelites think the exiles that was taken to Babylon, when the 99% ran into Africa, it was a little small percentage that got captured. In the book of Isaiah explain it. I got videos going into how he said that tenth would be destroyed and end up on return to the land, you know what I'm saying, from the captivity. And that's exactly what happened to them. And that how that we didn't go into Africa with demigod worship on us, or believing that some God's son would come save us. You know, we didn't go into Africa believing that. And then, you know, that's a tradition that was created by the folks that we abandoned heritage to, and how that they believed in God's son. So they history gonna become dominant if we abandon our heritage and didn't want to be Israelites no more. So Israelites done picked up their false doctrines and then accepted it as truth. Now going into Africa, number 4 is a bad thing. Is that we did not go into Africa in 70 AD because Herd Edomite temple was destroyed. It don't make no sense. It don't make no sense. That ain't making no sense. That's not making any sense for us to go into Africa because Herd built the temple and then it got burnt up during a proxy war. See, a lot of Israelites don't know that Sep Hardy and Ashkenazi been fighting a proxy war over the Israelite heritage since we abandoned it. Since we abandoned it to them. You know, I got it in their own words right here. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to read it. The Sep Hardy idea has always been understood in terms of political moderation and community unity. Rarely did Sephardim lose their internal cohesion, that is, until the process of cultural erosion set in. Following the Ashkenazi lead, Sephardim abandoned their traditional culture and adapted to the fractious Ashkenazi model. Under the rubric of a single Jewish nation, they hated the Sephardic particularity with its cultural genius and sophisticated social mores. That's going to be them Babylonian scribes that's able to keep the Babylonian God's history going. I explained that how that these folks, the Sephardis come from Sipper. You know, they come from Sipper, and Sipper is where the Babylonians God's history come from, and that false God history been around on this earth, man, a long time, and that how it done fooled a lot of folks, man. They didn't. Matter of fact, the Babylonian God's history. This is where the Sephardis are from, Sipper, and this is the place that's responsible for all of Babylon's false gods history, and how that they kept it intact, even though Assyria come snatch their gods back in past, but it was all here, and they chronicalized it, and they kept it alive, man, to this day. And they are Amorites, and they've been in our heritage since Exodus. But the main important ones came in 722 BC, when the king of Assyria placed them in our land. And then they've been there ever since. And then when we went into Africa to do the Egyptian religion, man, they took over our heritage and started putting out false history and so forth. All right, going into Africa in 70 AD is false because, you know, the Israelites would have been exposed to almost 400 years of Greek and Roman culture, and then like us Israelites been in bondage in America, and how it's impossible for us to get this American culture and stuff up off us from the language we speak and everything, and that how it's impossible to get this these traditions up off us after being here so long. It would have been the same with the Israelites that had went into Africa if they would have been exposed to Greek culture and so forth. You know, I showed that the exiles were destroyed by the Greeks. And you know, I got videos going into this, how the exiles destroyed by the Greeks, and that how us that ran into Africa during the Babylonian Wars, how we never was exposed to Greek culture, Greek or Roman culture, and that's why come it wasn't found on the slaves. So, you know, a lot of Israelites believe in that myth that we was around in the promised land in 70 AD, and that we had experience with the Greeks and the Romans and so forth. They don't know that's the Sephardi's and the Ashkenazis history, and that they was exposed to the Romans and the Greeks and so forth after we was destroyed, and that how that they froze the history and got you thinking that it's all one. You know, they got you thinking that the Tanakh is a continuation all the way down to the New Testament, when it's a 500-year difference. 500-year difference, man. The Tanakh closed 430 BC. 430 BC, and that was the end. And that how 500 years later, 600 years later, they create New Testament history that's supposed to be related to the exiles, but that's false. That's false, because the exiles were destroyed during Greek times, or we would have been exposed to the Greeks and Romans, and then you would have found that culture on us in Africa, and you couldn't, and you didn't. So that's false history. Now I'm going to sum it all up. Now, believing in 10 lost tribes, believing Israelites escaped the curses, living all around the world and so forth, and they was able to keep an Israelite heritage is false. Believing in demigods, that God's sons and all that stuff coming to save us, that we could trace its origin to the slavery days, and how the Israelites didn't have no knowledge of the demigod fella in the New Testament, and that how we was not pre-exposed to it, man, before slavery, because we would have had as owners during the slavery days. You know, when they captured us, you know, we would have been able to communicate with our captors and so forth. And then believing that we went into Africa in 70 AD because Herod temple was destroyed, man, that's a danger. That's a danger, because they're saying that we was pre-exposed to Greek culture and so forth. And man, they created a lot of false history during Greek times, those Babylonian scribes. Man, they got to writing all kind of books. Well, Israelites will read books that's supposed to be related, meant to those eras, and they would believe that it's real, and that they can, you know, get themselves together based upon that. Well, that's false. That's false. And that how we abandon our heritage to some folks that write history. Now, you got to get that into your mind whenever you picking up a book, reading it about Israelite history. Are these the peoples that wrote the history after we abandoned the heritage for Egyptian religion? Did these people write these books? And 9 out of 10 they did, because we ain't started writing no books and so forth to now putting some history together after our captivity started to come to an end. All right, Israelites, you know, history, Israelites shouldn't believe in 10 lost tribes. Israelites escaped curses, demigods, going into Africa in 70 AD. All those are false history, and that'll keep you away from truth, or keep you from knowing the truth. And that how we only got one truth is the Tanakh history, and you can follow world history and what happened to the Israelites based upon it. All right, shalom, Israelites. I hope this video was informative.